back to a regularly scheduled program for a special news bulletin from Westgate World.
What's up, guys? Just want to welcome you guys to the Twisted World Pilot. So I got my friends here. I'm going to introduce them in a minute. We're going to give you some groundwork and foundational pieces of what we do and what we're going to do for the many episodes to come of this show. Main points are really focusing on conspiracy theories, rumors, myths, so on and so forth. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Aaron. Thanks to some great guys named Key and Peele a few years back, I now get to walk around and people say, "Oh, Aaron." So it is whatever it's going to be. But my name's Aaron. I'm here with two of my good friends and fellow researchers. And they're going to introduce themselves, and we're going to just kind of jump into it right after that.
I'm Andy. I am his best friend. If he says otherwise, that in itself is probably our first conspiracy theory we should talk about and discuss. Yeah, I'm here to pick apart all of his theories and show you that I am right and he is wrong. And then we'll go over to the next guy we got here.
Yeah, I'm Cody. I don't take anything seriously. And I also like to party, so I'll give you my opinion on just about.
So listen, this is our pilot. Can you take it just a little bit serious?
Like,
no,
we're gonna go with some really deep stuff here, though, Cody. I mean, like, I don't think the rave scene and government conspiracy theories kind of go hand in hand.
I don't know. I think you might be wrong. I think I could bring a lot of flavor. I could bring a lot of flavor to the theories with how I.
We just.
So maybe
party it up.
Maybe being too serious, as you know. I mean, you just gotta.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, I mean, speaking of just touching on these government conspiracy theories, let's just jump right in, and we're gonna lay some groundwork here, so you guys understand something. There's a lot of conspiracy theories out there. Over the years, we'll touch on ones that are 5, 10 years old. But the reality is there's ones that are 50, 60, 70 years old, and over time came to truth. So the reason we're going to talk about those is they are true. I mean, it came out and so on, and that's where we're at. But these ones that are a little bit more current, I mean, they sound outlandish, and that's really where we're going to target first and foremost, just so you guys know where we're at in this. So the first one I want to talk about is Project Mockingbird. So did you guys do a little bit of research on Project Mockingbird? I did, and basically we're just gonna sum it up. In the reality, so the CIA created Project Mockingbird, and at first it sounded great because what they were trying to do is prevent media from exposing intel, government secrets. Here's the thing. I'm all for our government having some secrets because that's really what keeps us more powerful, right? So,
is it?
Well, I mean, I think so. I think that it's imperative in some levels, but I think they kind of crossed the line. You know, the Family Jewels report, which was, it listed all these details of actions they were doing, including, and this is where it gets crazy, guys. Listen. Over 400 journalists were basically hired by the CIA to control media. They hired them, told them what to say. Well, go ahead.
Oh, so like this was back in what, 1970 something?
Right? 59 to 73, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I mean, media was that just like newspapers and
radios? Newspapers, radio, yeah, and then eventually some TV.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, like, to do what though? I mean, what were they like?
That's their message, right? So we're talking a little bit of like brainwashing the lane people, right? The people that are you and me, normal guys, go to work every day. Listen to radio.
Average Joe.
So here's the funny part. Normally I'd be like, oh, this is totally not true. It's bull crap. But the reality is, I feel like we're living in a time where it may be happening again.
Well, that's my point.
Right? So we're talking about reality in today, right? Is the media swayed to one side over another?
So let me pose this question.
Are they being paid to do it? Are they being pressured to do it?
Right. Let me pose this question to you.
All right.
Are they still at it? So they got exposed. everybody, the American people found out about this. It's clearly, you can look it up. Project Mockingbird, Family Jewels, check it out.
The CIA did it. It was the CIA that actually used the journalists to do this, and there's actually documents. You can actually go back and there's more recent documents from 1996 where they actually break it down how they did it.
So I did actually look at it.
Okay.
I looked at Project Mockingbird,
yep.
and there's a difference between Project Mockingbird and Operation Mockingbird, which there's two different things, right? So Project Mockingbird is when JFK didn't like the fact that someone had written something. It was like government leaks, right? It was about government leaks. So he put wiretaps on phones. He hired agents to do some reconnaissance on the suspected folks who may be leaking, classified government information, right?
And that's the stuff I think is necessary for our safety as a country.
No, yeah, and that's the part that's like fact. The conspiracy part, right?
Yeah.
The part that is the part we're talking about is when the 400 journalists. That's Operation Mockingbird, and I don't know where that is in the Family Jewels because I looked at the
in-depth report.
Yeah, the in-depth report, and it has a table of contents. You can go to the exact pages. I went to page 20 through 27 or something like that. It's not 6 pages long, but basically, I didn't see a lot in there about those 400 things you're talking about, but and I think that's the part that's up for debate a little bit in it. But are they doing it today? I'll just bring it back to the point we're talking about. Are they doing it today?
The question is we know the potential's there, right?
Yeah, of course.
So what's to say? I mean, let's give it an example. Last year's riots, right? You had a lot of different media sources taking different stances and encouraging different groups. Well, here you are. If I know media is supposed to be free, it's supposed to be free speech and freedom of the press, but at the end of the day, when things swayed, it really seemed like, I'm just going to be transparent here, that a lot of those media sources were taking stances that seemed to variate. And in turn, average everyday Joe who's out, works a 9, 8, 9, 10-hour shift, whatever, construction, police officer, the whole works. They get home, they have some dinner, they turn on the news, they watch the news for an hour. Well, they see what the news gives them at the end of the day. So if we've got Project Mockingbird, Operation Mockingbird, there was, definitely stuff that was leaked in 2007, which is why there's so much information on it now. At the end of the day, if we believe and know that this took place, then, so what's to say that they're not doing it now?
Yeah, so I think it's I'd want to know the motive behind back then. Why? A little bit. I mean, I'm sure it was the Cold War. I mean, obviously they don't want to influence communism. They want to make sure they're pushing that back on the public. Right?
And whatever secrets we got going on, they don't want that stuff getting out.
Right.
Totally understand.
Yeah. No, and I get that. It's that now I think media is a lot different than it was back then, and I think that a lot of more people are influencing it than just our government. I don't think just our government has a role in that.
Well, I mean, you see things like Fox News swing pretty hard, right? That's considered a conservative news station. And
right.
They swung to the right?
Swung to the left.
They've swung. Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's
and a lot of that wrapped around, big events, rioting, public or presidential elections, those types of things. So you are seeing things that we would kind of seem like, okay, if anything, conspiracy theories have become more of a thing, more pop cultural reference rather than outlandish.
So are you inferring that Fox News has swayed due to an outside source?
100%.
Okay. So you 100%. Think they're taking some sort of bribe or something like that?
And I would not necessarily bribe. I think pressure. I think can do it. You understand these big companies are owned by individuals, and those individuals are influenced based on political events, right? Things like states and those types of things that have influence over what happens to them. You see that big time with the fact that ABC is owned by Disney, right? And Disney's a liberal company for the most part. They sway towards the left. It used to not always be that way. We had a lot more conservative channels than just Fox News, right? Fox actually used to be more moderate, liberal years ago. So things swing back and forth quite a bit, right? But after the election and the Black Lives Matter riots and those types of things, it did seem like the lines were a little more blurred.
But
now, that's not just one place, right? There's multiple.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of things all happen at one time. Brand messaging, right? When things started happening and all those messaging, we're talking about fake news years ago, right?
Well, so let me just drop a bomb on this same topic, and I'm just going to use an individual from World War II that controlled the press, controlled the media, and he put out all his propaganda, and he got an entire nation to believe his thoughts, right? So you have Adolf Hitler, did what he did, right? He controlled every ounce of media. Controlled. Like any newspaper or something you had in that country was written by his people, and it was put out, and they prevented everything else. So here you are, a leader, and I'm not saying our leaders are Hitler and we're gonna go doing some crazy off the wall stuff. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying history has shown the potential. Right?
Well, it's the argument of freedom of press.
Right.
So in Nazi Germany, Hitler, I mean, we can go there. The reality is there was no freedom of press. He owned
None.
it.
Right.
He owned it, right? Communism.
But the question is do we really have freedom of press?
Well, that's the question, right?
Yes.
That's where conspiracy theories comes in. So I would say that to some extent, yes, we still have freedom of the press because the reality is news isn't just news anymore. It's not the radio. It's podcasts, right?
Yeah.
It's us talking about it. It's
right.
the internet and Twitch streams and
well, that's my next point.
Streaming.
What about social media?
Well, social media and what we've seen is pop culture. Those types of people actually have more sway. Elon Musk, Bitcoin, right?
Right.
You see a lot more of that sway coming from social people, so it's not just news anymore.
But let's talk about Twitter and Facebook, and I use it. We all use it heavily, love it. But I've seen a lot of people censored off some stuff. I just don't understand why it's censored.
Again,
but then I see other things that make the cut, and it's like
again, when you have. We'll talk about vaccinations, right? Just for a second. When you have someone like Biden going on TV who say that Facebook is killing people because they're not censoring people or encouraging people to get the vaccinations, I think that's an overstep.
Right.
And that's very public. It was on the news. Him standing out on the lawn in front of his helicopter. But the reality is, yes, pressure can be a form of censorship. It can be a form of taking that freedom of press away. The problem is they've allowed it to happen. Why have they allowed it to happen? Is it because they're afraid? I don't believe it. I think there's more.
But that's the conspiracy theory, right?
Right.
Is what if anything is truly happening?
Right.
I mean, Cody, what do you think? What is your thoughts on? Do you really believe
doubt in his
that?
eyes.
Yeah.
I see doubt.
I see it too. Like I get it, and that's why I'm like we're gonna bounce this ball back over to him and say, hey, what's your thoughts? Where do you think that our government is right now on this thought of controlling the media? Is it happening? Is it an outlandish thought?
I think there are connections, obviously, but I don't think it's like anything like. I think it's more pressure, like you said before. I think it's more social pressure than anything else because I think that's a lot stronger than any sort of bribe.
I think nowadays, 100%, I agree with you.
Yeah, no, I think because of social media and because of how fast information travels now, as opposed to back then, in the 70s.
For sure.
I think social pressure is a lot more productive than any sort of bribery you can do to one company. So that's why I don't think like there's like a direct contact between maybe the White House and Fox News.
Yeah.
But I think that that social pressure has finally crept up and gotten to the top of those sort of things and influenced those sort of things through social media.
Yeah.
Because social media influences you without even you knowing it, and like
on an individual level, yes.
Yeah, but that's how it happens, right? If you have it on an individual level, but for everybody, it's on a global level, right? I mean, everybody has social media, right? So I mean, it is influencing everybody.
Sure.
So
I think I looked it up, and it was like social media in whole worldwide has multi-billions of people at this point, billions. So that's a lot of people to influence. Because here's the thing: if you put this stuff on social media, right, you control it. An individual looks at it. There was some study done where they say the amount of time people spend in the bathroom on Facebook, right? And it was like this crazy number and amount of time, right? And so here's these people. They're doing their thing. They're looking at Facebook. They see some stuff. They take it as reality. And then what do they do though? They take it to their friends who, yeah, maybe they're on Facebook too, but they dump it on them. And then it just becomes this.
Yeah, like, hey, this is what I saw on today. You know,
yeah,
that's what I saw, and they'll talk about it, and then ideas are exchanged just like that.
Yeah.
They didn't even think about how they were influenced to relay that information
or research it. Yeah. I mean, nobody's researching anything. They're just like, hey,
this is, and they take it at face value.
Yeah.
No, they don't take it at face value. They take it as truth. Okay.
That's why you got the crate challenge. It's like, are you guys serious right now? Who's doing this? Like
the what challenge?
The crate challenge.
The crate challenge.
Have you not seen the crate challenge?
I'm not on social media
not
anymore. I should probably say that. I haven't been on social media in actually like since February. So just
that's because it muddies your eye.
Don't worry, family and friends. He will be.
Actually, that's not true. If you call YouTube social media, I'm on it. I'm on it. I'm on YouTube all the time.
Less social, in my opinion. Right? You're not actually interacting with people on an individual level. That's what social media is to me. Right?
And I do have Twitter notifications, but I don't interact on Twitter. I just like to see what's going on. That's my eye.
That's your news source. You don't watch the news, right?
No,
not
I literally just go on Twitter.
And that's what I'm saying. So, like, here's the thing. Real quick, before we move on to the next topic here, just kind of finishing this up, the reality is it's like Twitter, for instance. When Trump was still in the running, okay, Fox was behind him 100%, just totally trashing on the other side, and mudslinging and all this stuff was going on. Twitter's blowing up, all these people dropping all these things, and we'll talk about the conspiracy theories behind like Trump hiding in bunkers and planning to take over the world or U.S. via civil war, all these different things, right? But Twitter's blowing up, dumping all this stuff. And I can't tell you how many people come to me like, hey, did you hear? And it's like, do you know this? Like
Telegram.
And that's
Telegram. I got a Telegram account.
Right? Like where is this coming from?
There's so many of those because my dad I'm sorry, Dad, if you're listening to this, sorry. But
he loves you.
I really do. And
yes, he does.
But I'll tell you this, to your face. So basically, like, he'll say that, like, hey, Trump's coming up. He's going to be our president. And I'm like, Dad, Biden's been in office for 9 months now.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, they got the votes wrong. I saw it. I got a source that says they checked all the votes at the beginning and they're about to really do something here. And I'm like, Dad, that's just not going to happen.
No.
Like, it's just not. It's not. It's just too far gone. It's just And I'm like, what are you reading that from? He's like, oh, I'll pull it up. And he can't find it, or when he does, it's just some like one-off thing. And I'm just like, that's just not real.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. So like Twitter blows up this stuff where I seen all these different things about Trump's on his way to prison right now. I'm like, no, he's not. No, he's not. This is
you'd be hearing that.
Stupid. We're not talking about this.
Scream from the rooftop. That was happening. You would really know. You don't need to have some underground source.
Like it's just crazy. Like people, the amount of responses, like, oh, I know, like, he's in coalition with the Russians, and like these long. I mean, there was like thousands of responses, and I'm like, oh man. And this is why we do what we do here, right? So fans, friends, family. This is really the pinnacle of what we are taking on because this stuff is real. And the conspiracy theories at least are real in the fact that they're constantly just spewed out there. So fact or fiction, we don't know. But I know. Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Everything.
I'll let you know if it's right or wrong.
He'll tell us. So
the arbiter of truth.
Let's talk about this next one. This next one is absolutely crazy. I really... when I read this one, I was like, this can't be right. And again, this is now public knowledge. So there was this battleship, right? I mean, we had troops and stuff in Vietnam, but we really hadn't, as a country, said, all right, we're going to engage Vietnam. So there was an incident on August 4th, 1964. A battleship, the USS Maddox, was off the coast of Tonic, I believe. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But anyways, it radios in and says, hey, we're under fire. And so they start shooting their guns. And a carrier not too far by sends out a fighter plane to go assist. Well, that pilot, highly decorated, by the way, Purple Heart, and he went on to state that he never saw a boat. The USS Maddox claimed that there was torpedo boats, Vietnamese torpedo boats attacking them. Okay, well, that's an engagement of war, right?
Right.
Because they're trying to protect the South Vietnamese, right? Well, there's these communist torpedo boats supposedly attacking them. And so they say, hey, we're attacking. Well, here's the thing. And then we can get into a deep discussion about this. But at the end of the day, this was one of the pinnacle main pieces after this attack, because they said it was an aggressive attack. It was how they got Congress to agree to full-on war in Vietnam. So think about that. If it didn't actually happen, if this was a fallacy, and this battleship actually did not attack anything, and it was just sent there to say, hey, we need you to falsify an attack. And it did. And again, this fighter pilot, highly decorated, just want to put that out there, came on to statement later when he flew over there that he never saw a ship, that he stated that they were firing at open water. Mm. So here you are, this incident. It took place, real or not. There's a lot of evidence. Some NSA docs were revealed in the 2000s, providing that it was fake, and it was for the gain of U.S. involvement in Vietnam. So thoughts were I mean, that's a pretty big piece.
I have a question. So
yeah,
this fighter pilot.
Fighter.
Where did he take off from? Because it takes a lot of fuel to get out into open waters like that, and so I'm wondering if the USS Maddox is a carrier. Or
no, there was a carrier.
There was a carrier.
Yeah, the carrier sent because
the Maddox. It was behind them.
The Maddox called in. You know, because if you're going to falsify something, you have to make sure you're not just going to attack and then call in, hey, we just attacked these torpedo boats. They tried attacking us.
Yeah.
No, you're going to call in an emergency. You're going to radio in forces. Well, this carrier says, all right, we're going to send a fighter plane to you. And so they sent this.
To, like, scope it out? Is that what the point was?
Yeah, to reconnaissance and protect. Okay. Because they do carry bombs and things like that, right? So, especially torpedo boats. We're talking submarines, right? Submerged.
So are they submarines? Because torpedo boats can shoot torpedoes, but they're just boats.
I didn't get the full detail on that, but I did read that they claimed they were underwater submerged and attacked. Okay, so submerged. That would lead me to believe that they were submarines of some sort. And it's very possible that the Vietnamese had this equipment because they were supported by the Russians, right? We know that. Which is truly, if you start looking at history, why people think that we even engaged in that war was because of Russia, not necessarily the North Vietnamese. Yeah. So back to it, though. Here's this event, potentially the pinnacle piece of Congress going, we can't have that. We're trying to protect the South Vietnamese. Communist involvement is not okay. Now they're aggressively attacking us. We clear for war.
I got a theory.
Let's hear this.
All right. So,
okay.
Historically,
no
president has ever lost re-election during war. Mm-hmm. Johnson took over for Kennedy when he was assassinated. Mm-hmm. He only had 1 year left in his term.
Yep.
Okay, which was, I believe, Kennedy came in 1961. So we were talking towards the end of his. This is it.
Yeah.
He's in his last year.
Yep.
So he's up for re-election.
Correct.
Goes to war with Vietnam.
Yep.
Gets re-elected. And stays until 1969. The theory there is if he's not in a war, he needs to be in one. At the time there was tensions. We knew that there was an inner war. Some would say a war we didn't need to be involved in, but nonetheless, a war that happened.
Most.
Right? Most would. Right? That's not the argument here. The argument here is the conspiracy behind it.
Well, and that's...
We know that... Well,
and we also know that people were still high off the communism thing. They were like, oh, North Vietnam? Right.
Well, we had the Soviet...
Stop that.
Right? We had our Soviet stuff, going on.
Right.
He needed a war. So... I don't know that I would call this proven to be true, other than the fact that we have a statement from a highly decorated pilot
right.
that said he is, right? That's one pilot in the middle of war going out and something, there are a number of reasons why he could have seen and not seen things, right? But the reality is, the conspiracy behind it, in my opinion, I'm president, I'm looking for something to shoot at. Because I wasn't the one that was elected. I was the vice president. I'm the nobody. I'm the guy that's there in the event that something happens, which years before, something that we had never seen in our lifetimes, right? Or at that time they had never seen, right? We had an assassination of our president on television, right? It was a big thing.
Huge.
So he's not going to stay president just because his predecessor was shot in the head, right? So he needs something to keep him in office.
Absolutely.
So I think the thought process and the theory there is there's some foundation to the fact that there may not be votes. Well, he needed to win.
And there is, by the way, just to touch on this, in those 200-page NSA docs that were released in 2000, there was some information that was leaning specifically about Johnson and stating that he gained political status for going to war against Vietnam, right? I know there was a lot of people in the country that were against it, but there was a lot more that were for it.
Well, keep in mind, Woodstock came through that generation.
Right.
So as a result to us going to war, I think we saw more of a flare-up in the Woodstock stuff happening.
Right.
But before then, we were a country that liked to respond with strength, right? So seeing your president, your guy, go out there and be like, we were shot at, we will not be shot at, we're going to respond. Of course, that's a huge pump.
Right.
It's a huge pump to it. Absolutely.
So I just want to throw this thought-provoking conspiracy out that can, in a sense, so let's assume all these docs came out, this happened, fighter pilot was right, and this led us to the Vietnam War, right? Full engagement. So it flared up our country, a lot of emotions were rolling, and again, the communist thing, like you said, Cody, was still very impactful.
It definitely gives motive. I'll say that.
100%.
Definitely has a reasonable motive.
But
right there.
Let me ask you guys this. So that means a president and our Congress agreed to go to war with this country over a fallacy. Let me ask you. This brings it to more of a modern day 2001, very massive conspiracy in our country. A lot of people think it's ridiculous that this would even be feasible. But there are a lot of people out there that are really questioning whether what I'm about to say is real or not. And here it is. Is it potentially possible that the conspiracy theory behind President Bush and his cabinet being the ones actually behind the trade towers falling? And for the reason that it sparked up our country, fired everybody up, and it was so easy then to attack the Middle East, specifically Iraq and Saddam, which the Bushes have had their own issues with like Desert Storm, Desert Strike, early 1990s took place. Right. Okay, that was Bush Sr. So here's Bush Jr. really wants to take this guy down, not to mention the monetary gain and everything else behind, taking on Iraq and taking land, right?
Don't forget the oil.
Right? So, here we are. We have this Vietnamese incident that a president and his cabinet and Congress possibly took a very false incident and used it to take on Vietnam and declare war. Now you have 2001, trade towers fall. A lot of people say that 2 planes couldn't have done it, 3 planes, like the way it fell. There's like engineers that I've read information on that are just like baffled how it happened.
I don't know how you test for it. First off, I mean, I was a teenager, right? I remember sitting on the couch and watching the second plane hit.
Right, it was crazy.
Right, so nonetheless, like if you flew a plane into a building, I don't care how strong the plane is or the building is, I think it's coming down. Right, I get engineers saying it, whatever, but the reality is it was built, years and years back. They did not build it to withstand an airplane going into it at 500-600 miles an hour.
Hey. Yeah, they built it to where when an airplane flew into it, it'll collapse.
Yeah, there we go.
Crazy, right?
Here we see.
I mean,
that's just like
the timing of this podcast is terrible.
I'm so glad that you took that stance on it because here's my thing, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how much you've looked into this, but there's actually a significant amount, an interesting amount of evidence that points to it being possibly set up.
Yeah.
Right. There's a. I know you're shaking your head already. You're like, this is ridiculous.
Dude, like,
it's not true.
It's deep.
No, I'm really.
Like, some of these people are like.
I encourage you really like go look at it because it's like there's some videos on YouTube. There's some pictures you can look at, and there's also some 3D animations people put together, and it's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Any of these people with like actual knowledge, not the fact that they're just engineers, that didn't get the job to build the building, but like are any of them of actual stature that can make
hey, before I forget, listen, family, friends, fans, you guys comment on this stuff because this is a big one, right? This is like.
No, I just want to clarify.
It's lingering. We're talking. This is 20 years ago.
I just want to clarify. I'm in no way saying that I believe.
No. I get it.
I'm just saying.
Speaking of social media,
I'm just saying that. Hey, guys, you should check it out. It's really interesting. I mean, it's good. There are some
your point of view.
Yeah. This is the pressure we were talking about. We're feeling it in the room right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Andy's looking at us like we're nuts. Listen, we don't believe this, but we have. It's always the elephant in the room, right? You have to discuss it.
I'm open to the idea that we didn't land on the moon, but that Twin Towers wasn't terrorists.
No, okay, I'm really teetering on landing on the moon thing.
I'm on the fence.
We'll get to that, but what I'm saying is,
well, when it takes us 12 years or 1,000 years to get back.
Like, I mean, guys, the Earth is flat, right? So, anyways,
that's where our guest star.
No, I think there were some people that came forward, a couple years after 9/11, and they said there were some people coming into the building and tampering with like the. I want to say like the support beams, like inside, like the floors of where the plane actually.
Literally, we could do a whole show on the 9/11 incident, and I think we will. Again, that's why I want to see what our fans and everybody have to say and get their input. Again, listen, everybody out there, we are not taking a stance necessarily that we 100% believe this, but hey, there are so many people out there. Some of y'all listening are probably some of these people that have a stronger stance to the fact that it's possible that this was a setup. This was a setup to engage war. So
okay, to engage war other than what? Just to grab the land, to take it over?
Well, there's a lot. There's a lot behind it. Again, you have to go back to Bush Jr. wanted to finish what his dad started. And Saddam didn't get taken out during Desert Strike.
I hear you.
He got bigger, actually. He grew bigger. He grew more money. He grew more forces and got bigger. And so, I believe that it was a vendetta of some sorts. And
don't forget about the oil.
And I don't have a problem with our president like wanting to take out a bad person. He wasn't good. Let's just keep it real.
About the oil. The reality is we are a power country, right? Yeah. So our stature, where we stand in the place of power throughout the world matters. And you've got places like communist China and Russian Soviets, right? They all want it too, right? Sure. So it's whoever gets there first. That may be not the best way to approach war, but the reality is it happens, and it's going to happen. But we can use this Afghanistan leaving right now. You're going to see what would be considered a sinkhole right now be taken over by whoever the biggest power goes.
Right, but back to the dark cloud, the conspiracy theory behind it. Did our president and his cabinet and even Congress, and it was, it's definitely secret, right? If you're probably the most secret people in our country, NSA, whatever the case may be, that would have to orchestrate something like this, right? I mean, this is not easy to do.
Yeah. What you're saying is like the connection between the two, the USS Maddox and what happened with Lyndon B. Johnson.
Right. And we're going to touch on one more right after this.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about some Cuba incidences.
Yeah.
That, again, illustrate a very similar situation where our, high-ranking government officials, before we get into it, but really just to sum it on that piece is, these high-ranking government officials had this whole plan, and part of this massive plan was to commit terrorist acts on Americans and blame it on Cuba so we could attack Cuba. To convince the American people we need to go to war with Cuba. Again, another incident where they are orchestrating things behind the scenes. And the one I'm about to talk about in Cuba, we know, right? The trade tower thing is just, it's all over the place. Many people had this belief. Many people had this stance. And then you have the other ones that are like, no way President Bush did that. No way that they would have attacked our own people.
Sweet old Bush.
I mean, yeah, listen, here's the thing.
Never.
The Trade Towers fell. Like within a week, Toby Keith had these great songs come out, and America was like, let's do this, right? I mean...
You know how many people enlisted into the service after 9/11?
Oh.
That alone.
Our country
Mind
was
you,
fired
that
up.
alone.
Mind you, there were huge bonuses given to those that did enlist. Again, I went in high school. I was graduating in 03, right? I mean, offered massive signing bonuses to go in. Because
Andy, I just want to know, were you fired up about Toby Keith's song? Did you like him? I mean, like,
it was all right. I thought to myself, well, this is good timing. How did you pull this off?
like
so
quickly,
fast?
right?
If anything, there's
like
a
multiple
there,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
he had the lyrics.
did instantly.
It's
Great song,
unrelated.
good songs though.
Unrelated, but the movie Top Gun.
Right?
After the release of Top Gun, the Navy saw its biggest increase in recruits in like ever. Literally, right after like that movie was released,
It's fantastic propaganda.
So many people
Let's
joined
go.
the Navy. They were
Yeah.
like, yeah, I want to be Tom Cruise, dude.
Yeah,
They needed access to the jets.
Yeah,
he did. And a cool motorcycle, and he played volleyball. It was great.
And a name like Maverick.
yeah.
Right?
But
Yeah.
I digress. The reality is, none of you are ever going to be right on this. So
I don't
What's there to
necessarily.
be right about?
Here's the crazy part. I don't think I want to be right on that. Like that's the.
I
This
think
is one of
that's
those
probably
ones.
more the part that's churning a little bit in me is it's difficult to talk about.
It's not really
Yeah.
I don't want to strive to be right. It's just more like I want to know the truth.
Well,
Yeah.
That's the biggest
here's
thing.
Right?
the point to
I mean,
make
that's what
on
we're about
this,
here, right?
I don't care about
Talking
being
about the
right.
truth. Here's the point to make about it. Regardless of who caused the accident, people died and they got hurt.
Yeah.
And that still sinks in me, right?
Sure.
But would it change the emotion behind how I feel about those people? Absolutely not. It may change the way we approach going to war and those types of things, right? The Iraqi war is different from Afghanistan. I think a lot of times people our generation blend those two together. They were a result of two different things.
Absolutely.
Right? But the reality is, I don't want to be right. I don't want it to be right that this was a conspiracy, right?
Well, no, because then what's politically about? I mean, that's just some dark stuff about.
Yeah, you don't want horrible things to be true. No.
Yeah, we don't.
But-
yeah, we don't want to know
But I
that
think
our
the truth is
government
important.
is actually taking
That-
down Americans to incite war.
I just think I'm having a hard time with, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No.
the hard part is
Yeah.
trying to understand the political aspect of why he would have done it. This is 2001. Bush gets into office, just gets elected, a hanging Chad, right? So I guess there's that cloud hanging over it. Maybe that's the one thing. Maybe he's just trying to boost his popularity. Going to war
Massively.
doesn't always do that, especially at the generation when he went. However, responding to a big loss, actually the largest loss of American lives ever, right? I mean,
Well, and here's the thing.
civilian.
I'm just going to give you this piece. No American president is perfect. We know that. Look at Clinton. He likes his cigars and other women. I mean, it came out.
I haven't run yet.
Yeah. Listen, that's crazy. So, President, the one thing too about good public speakers, charismatic public speakers, they tend to have a level of narcissism, right? And I believe when you read some of the reports and stuff of these people that truly diehard believe that, our government took a stance and said, hey, we're going to do this undercover stuff. And they did it, potentially. And who knows? I mean, there's a multitude of reasons we could throw at it against, again, the Bush Sr. thing, Bush Jr. wanting to make his stance, right? Make his point as a president. I took on Iraq. I beat Saddam. One of the most powerful dictators in this world at the time, right? He did it. But he couldn't have done it. Like, until those trade towers came down, nobody was agreeing to attack Iraq. Congress was not okay with it. The trade towers came down. The entire American people said, we have to go to war. I mean, like you said, how many people signed up, right? Literally, our country was fired up. Fired up. Great country songs came out, and man, people were waving flags and getting down. So the reality is we could look at a multitude of potential reasons why this transpired, or if it transpired. Who knows? Again, none of us want this to be true, but there are a plethora of individuals out there that have all kinds of stances and beliefs and information. I want to jump into this next piece that was a big conspiracy theory, and it kind of ties into what we're just it piggybacks on the USS Maddox thing and the possible trade tower conspiracy, and that's the FBI Counterintelligence Program. So, did you guys get a chance to look into that? Because
negative.
I did not dig into it. No, but we'll see.
Yeah. So
lay it out.
Perfect. Actually, my apologies. We're going to jump over, and we'll come back to that one. We're going to talk about Operation Northwoods. So Operation Northwoods is really the piggyback here, because Operation Northwoods never took place, but it was written by some of the top government officials at the time. And the only reason it didn't take place is because Kennedy shot it down. Kennedy's like, no. But we all know Kennedy was a good man. He had a belief in peace and things like that. And so they present Operation Northwood. At first, you start to read Operation Northwood, you're like, this doesn't seem so bad. But then you get into the deeper details of it. And they had this whole orchestrated thing by the CIA, all the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Not one, not two, all of them. They all stood for Operation Northwoods. They wanted it. And some of the parts were like, they wanted to, there's a lot of refugees from Cuba, because Cuba was communist, and, the leader was just out of his mind, and, the Russian coalition and all that stuff going on. So they planned to hijack planes, blow up ships, kill Cuban immigrants, create terrorist acts that would kill Americans, all as a setup to blame Cuba. So that, literally outlined so that they would have the power to engage war on Cuba.
False flag.
What?
Right? It's called a false flag.
Yeah.
False flag operation is where you go out and you basically throw a flag on the play. They say, hey, look what they did.
Yeah.
We need to act. Are we just going to stand here and watch it happen?
Right.
Right.
But that does not even. Back to the Maddox. Back to the Maddox with Vietnam. Very similar. Back to the discussion of the possible trade towers again. So we have incidences that have taken place. Documents have come out, and it was exposed. So here's the thing. Let me add in some more modern day stuff. We had the riots for last year, right? So they were going to do all this stuff internally on American soil, and they planned to, in a way, cause the American people to get fired up and attack Cuba. Again, we're back to the communist thing, right? America was very upset over the communist stuff, and rightfully so. But what about last year, 2020 riots? Okay. There was a lot of, even in the media, there was like pictures taken of individuals that looked like they were government officials and even police officers, possibly dressed up, planting bricks, inciting riots. There's no proof, 100%, but there's a lot of different media sources that thinks they've taken these great pictures and see people that are actually law enforcement and government officials.
I saw the bricks thing you're talking about.
The George Soros, right?
There's bricks
Well,
at actually
the
a
riots.
lot more locations. Like,
Yeah,
there's bricks at like tons of these riots.
They would
we
just
saw
show
them
up.
in
Yeah.
the riots when we
Like
were working.
pallets of them.
Right.
And it's all the same. They're pallets, and it's
Pallets.
like someone somewhere's delivering
Well,
these.
I heard that it was George Soros, right? The country breaker, the guy that comes in, he could just cripple a country down to its basic core and then make a bunch of money off of it.
We'll talk about Soros later, because
Right, but
supposedly that man has ties to the Illuminati.
Supposedly he's the guy that paid people to, I'm not going to divulge where we work, but
Right.
in the area that we were working in, we were pretty close with law enforcement.
Right.
We had found flyers throughout the city saying that they would pay $200 if you were a instigator in a riot. Right? You go out, you're the first person to throw something, $250. And there were flyers posted around town during these riots.
Right.
And we saw numbers in the 600 to 700, 700 people,
Right.
coming in and we'd have to put barriers up. And so 100% believe that there's some people involved in this.
And let's just jump one more piece, just real quick, as we're talking about this. What about the rush on Washington when they said it was all Trump supporters, and then these pictures start coming out of people that kind of were at other protests serving the other side. Like there's a lot of like what the heck is going on and why.
I saw a lot of that. There was like there was a bunch of TikToks going around. Like people like who openly were Antifa, and they had like Trump propaganda paraphernalia on. Yeah. And they just dressed up as if they were conservative, and they'd go there and they would instigate things to just make, the other side, look bad. And it, it worked. It's, good on them. But I mean,
it incited a lot of anger, a lot of fear. It had people separated, but it's the same similarities that we're talking about with like the Operation Northwoods, right? I mean, their plan was to literally incite riots and terrorist attacks and make it look like it was Cuba, right? Yeah. So that they could attack Cuba, all right? These docs were leaked. People, a lot of this information came out. And so we know that at one point this operation was planning to be inputted. If it weren't for JFK, it would have. We would have had a whole nother, piece of history that would have been like, wow, and maybe we would have gone to war with Cuba. Probably could have taken Cuba out fairly easily, but there was another one that like part of the Operation Northwoods was to also incite riots within Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay. So you got to look at this like these deep agendas, because that's the conspiracy behind it. Where are these deep agendas coming from, and are they still prevalent today? Are they still taking place? And a lot of people think yes. A lot of people absolutely stand in the fact that all these things are controlling human beings, right? Americans, controlling their thought processes. There's like, it's free thinking has really been drained through the ability of controlling things through media and propaganda and incidences like all this. So again, talking about the riots, talking about Washington and what transpired there. I mean, where are you guys at? Do you think that it's all a bunch of garbage, really took place, riots were legit, Washington was stormed by Trump supporters? Where are you at?
Well, I think it's tricky to say that, like, the riots were fake or they weren't, right? I mean,
right.
Like, I think they were real. I just don't. You're going to get a mix of people at all of them, I think. I think you're going to have a mixed bag when there's riots like that. I think they have reason to riot. I think they didn't happen, but I mean, it's hard to say, like, if they were, influenced or if they had, any special people there.
Were you there throwing bricks?
I may have thrown one or two.
Okay. Yeah. I thought so. I could have sworn I seen your...
He needed that 250.
Yeah. No,
it's hard. It's hard out here, okay?
Yeah, I mean...
but the bricks are harder.
So. Yeah, it's...
Terrible.
Listen. Oh, man.
No, but I mean, I don't know. I think there's obviously, like, some correlation there. If it's happened before, it can totally happen again. I mean, if it's been proven to happen with Operation Northwood, it can totally happen on a smaller scale.
Okay, I am, in most things, sarcastic, skeptical, non-trusting.
We know that.
In most things. Yeah. Most all things, right? So right. I am not one to go and be like, that ain't true. I mean, like, you come to me and you're like, oh, hey, did you know that blue light doesn't exist? It's just a thing that they make to sell blue light glasses. I'd go, that's not a real thing. Like, of course it does. I had LASIK and my eyes have reverted back because I stay in front of computers all day as a career, right? So right. I experienced it. But in my mind, logic, it's analytical. That's just how I function, right? So in most cases, I go, no, that didn't happen.
I just want to know, Earth round or flat?
Come on, it's round.
Is it? Are you sure?
Come on,
it's round.
I don't know.
It's pyramid shaped, guys.
Oh,
yeah. We'll talk about that later too.
But the point I'm trying to make in that is that I think that in the world that we're living in right now, even as a skeptical person that doesn't believe in a lot of these far-fetched ideas, the Holocaust didn't happen, those kind of things, and you're going to hear me argue through all those because I still to myself believe that what I've seen and what I've read and those types of things.
Wait a second. The Holocaust didn't happen?
Well, that was what we were talking about earlier.
I mean,
I guess that wasn't in this, but it was a pre-conversation to that.
Yeah, that was the alleged.
Wow.
Yeah. That was
Way
a
to throw me
deep,
under the bus.
deep conspiracy
You just
theory.
threw out, oh yeah, the Holocaust didn't happen.
But I'm making
There
a
wasn't
point.
1 million. There was
Making
one. It's just
a
one,
point.
and there was no showers, and like we
Making-
know, we
making a
heard
point.
it all
The
about
point I'm trying to make is
We heard it first,
that
folks. Andy Rowland
the world that
doesn't
we're
think
the
the Holocaust
world
happened.
the world that we are living in right now
Yes.
has become a place where even a skeptical, someone that doesn't believe in a lot of it, when I say skeptical, I'm not talking about like conspiracy skeptical. The idea that the conspiracy theories are even a real thing or that they've really happened.
Right.
I'm on the fence and always going, I don't think that's really happened. I think that things are just what they are.
And that's what we love about you. But remember, some stuff has come out. Conspiracy theories. People back then, like the Maddox and the Operation Mockingbird. Back then, people were like, "No way! There's no way that's real.
I hear you.
It's fake." Skeptical all the way.
I think that's
and
a
then all of a
generational
sudden,
thing. So
boom.
the idea that I'm trying to lay out is
Yeah.
that we are living in a time where I believe there are things that are happening that are becoming more exposed, even in a light way. So I am open to the possibility that things aren't what they seem.
Right.
And I think that's where it's hard to kind of take a stance. I agree with you, Cody. As far as riots,
Yeah.
right? I 100% believe the riots are BS.
Yeah.
Right? 100%. Right? And I think that on both sides. We have a far right and we have a far left. And I think that both sides are playing both sides.
Yeah.
Right? Talk to my wife. Talk to my wife.
Wait.
Go ahead.
I'm glad you said that, because that really the last topic before we really finish up this pilot episode, showing you guys kind of where we're at, where the foundational pieces of what we're doing and what we're going to be doing over many, many episodes to come, is the counterintelligence program. You're talking about divide. This program was built initially, back to communism, it was initially designed to prevent communism, right? They had
To stop the spread of a specific idea.
That's how it started.
Yeah.
That's how it started. But what happened so they built this thing, right, to target activist groups, because they believe activist groups is where communism would start to breed and people would get the thought of communism, start rolling with it.
Yeah.
And they had to stop that. I totally get that. I'm all for that, because communism has to be stopped, right? It is not okay for our country. We are a capitalistic free country. So FBI creates this thing. Here's the problem. They started to go after a lot of good activist groups, right? One thing that I read, and I don't know if you guys read this part or took an opportunity to read it a little bit. Do you know who their number one, this counterintelligence group, you know who their number one most wanted was back then? Did you guys see that?
No.
You guys ready for this?
Yeah.
Give it to me.
Number one most wanted was Martin Luther King.
Oh,
He
I
was
believe that.
number one target on the.
I
You
believe
talking about a man of peace and love?
But it wasn't like.
No.
Not everybody saw it that way.
It was against the grain. It was against the grain,
It-
right?
But it doesn't matter. Our country's free. He wasn't communist. He was simply just. He was
But
trying.
he was
He was
black.
march right.
That's what they had the problem.
But that
Right.
doesn't mean it. This thing started. It was approved to prevent communism.
Yeah.
They started dividing wedges between the races. Like there was different groups that were actually forming. The Black Panthers were joining up and hanging out with this other group. I didn't write it down. My apologies. But they sent in basically undercover people to divide this wedge through racism. And so that, because what was happening is you had this Black Panther group and this other group, and they were starting to join. What happens? What happens when human beings, and we stand against, we put our differences aside and we stand together, right? We are far more powerful, right? I mean, you can go back to the Civil War, right? Or the Revolutionary War. And so we know as a human race that we have that potential. So what did the FBI do? They sent in people undercover through this intelligence. Again, it was only designed to prevent communism, and they divided. They went after Martin Luther King. I mean, there was letters that they would send him to incite him to commit suicide.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely crazy. we know this happened. We know that our government took this stance, and I get it was a different time, different things, and I know there was a lot of fear. You know, you had different races fearing each other for one reason or another. Whatever the case may be, he was a good man. He did not incite any kind of violence or anything along those lines, and they were targeting him. Number one most wanted. Not a communist, not a fascist. We're talking about a reverend, a good man who just wanted, you know, the black community to have the same rights. Yeah. He was a right activist.
He's shaken up the political atmosphere, though.
Right.
And that's probably what caused them to want to silence that kind of movement, I guess. I mean, yeah, it's just a different time. I mean, we like a lot of people in government probably were not the most race friendly.
I know where this is going.
Yes.
So I know where it's going, right? You're going to start talking about the idea of, you know, race, black versus white.
It happened last year.
Or vax, no vax.
Yes.
Or mask, no mask. Or
there is a massive divide in our country.
Dutch Bros or Starbucks.
Yeah. Right? I mean, right.
The reality is there is a divide. And
it's not just hey, you have your thought, I have my thought, Cody has his thought. No, it's your thought is wrong because it's not my thought, and now I'm absolutely against you. Do you know there's family members that are at each other's throats because they have a different stance?
Right. Well,
why is that right?
When was the last time you heard the word opinion?
Right.
Right. Well, we don't have an opinion anymore.
No.
We no longer have the ability to speak freely.
Well, and so again, back in this early 1970s, this counterintelligence group, or late 60s, early 70s, this counterintelligence group was doing just that. They literally had undercover people inciting divide. Because together we stand strong. So the conspiracy theory is the max no vax thing. I mean, sure, everybody should have their right or whatever. Take your belief on whatever the case may be. But why is there propaganda out there that's really standing strong against the non-vaxxers to the point where vaxxers are angry? Like, oh, if you don't do it, you're going to kill me. Or the mask thing. Like, did you guys see those videos? Like, people walking in, like, this was last year, but people walking to Walmart and like, oh, I don't want to wear a mask. And people would follow them around, yelling at them, like, trashing them. Like, what happened to human kindness, regardless? And so, yes. And then there was the race thing. Massive, massive divide. Right? So, and who knows? Some people think that, what was it, George Floyd?
Yeah.
Well, the start of a lot of it.
That's where the start of, like,
there's belief about conspiracy theories behind that. And maybe we'll talk about that, in another episode. But that was even set up, right? And to initially kick off what became a very heavy racial divide in this country. So again, looking at the evidence of all these different events, and when they took place, oh no, it's an absolute conspiracy theory. None of it's real, and that's where the American people stood for the most part, right? But there was the ones that were like, no, it's real, right? And that's kind of where we're at. Like, we want to fetch out: is it true? Is it fiction? Where's it at? Right? And that's where we are, and that's what we're doing here. So, who knows what's transpiring right now in our government at the end of the day? Okay.
I know.
Yes. Andy knows everything.
Yeah.
So, we love Andy for that. He's
right. Is that the word you're trying to get to? Is I'm right?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably along those lines somewhere. So Andy knows all these conspiracy theories, as far as he's concerned, are fake. Who knows, though? I mean, I think that historical evidence would allude to it's possible, right?
I think the good stance that we want to do on this show is
Yeah.
the idea that we're going to tie in the old
Yeah.
with the current.
Right.
Right? Because the interest that there's always been interest in conspiracy theories.
Sure.
I said, but the interest right now is that it's become more readily available right? With the internet, with everything that's going on right now, social media, YouTube, everywhere you go, it's all at your fingertips. And so we have to kind of parse that information and go, okay, let's talk about it.
That's it.
Right? My wife comes up to me like, hey, look what I saw on Facebook. Guess what? 4 people in Congress, they're in, in the house. They're going to get arrested today. I'm all.
Hey, I just want to know something real quick. I don't want to go deeply into the mask thing and all that, but and maybe we'll cross this a little bit later. But the whole Fauci thing, right, came out that he, there was documentation or whatever
Wuhan thing
that he said
to it.
Right, and that masks don't work, but yet we're enforcing masks all over the place. I don't like
some places too.
This guy's the head of medical in a sense, right? And he literally says masks don't work. His writing, his document.
It was email.
It was email. Like it came, like it was exposed.
Email. Exposed email.
But here we are. Everybody needs to wear a mask. I just don't. Why? Like what? There's somebody. Maybe the mask works. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But where's the breakdown? Where this guy said everybody needs to wear a mask, but then they find emails saying he said the masks don't work.
He said it publicly. The masks don't work.
He went back and forth 2 or 3 times.
Multiple times. So where's the? That's what I'm saying.
So this is where you'll start to see me buy into a little bit more on the conspiracy theory side because I feel like we're living it, right?
Yeah.
And so,
right.
You go back and try to think about the conspiracies that are happening back in the 60s and 70s. I didn't live that time, so I can't tell you what they were thinking, what I would have thought back then. But the reality is, those ended up being exposed as being true. We're living in a time where we're getting to kind of, regardless of what your stance is, if you want to wear a mask, right? If you feel like you need to protect other people, wear a mask. If you think you need a vaccination, but I take a step further, right? When I'm being told that I need to get a vaccination and that this is what's gonna save other people, and I take that step to go get it done, right? But now I'm being told that even as a person that has a vaccination, I have to wear a mask. The logic doesn't match for me, right? And again, I told you I was on logic and analytical, right?
Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
That's where
Mr. Right,
a logical person can get to a point going, something ain't right.
Yeah.
Someone's influencing this. I use the word revisionist, right? We're rewriting how things work.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. As someone that is very book and very like, this is how things were done, and of course they did that. That's ridiculous. That would never happen. I'm starting to question that, and I'm starting to go, maybe there is something here. Maybe there is something in some fact. There is some conspiracy here. It's hard to say it's not political right now. It's hard to say that there's not something, I don't want to call it the Illuminati, but the elites of the elites, right? Like,
we'll talk about those guys. Don't worry.
About like a Newsom, right? Like the mask mandate doesn't seem to apply to everyone, right?
Yeah.
So it feels like a control of the people, but to what end? That's what we're here to discuss.
That's what it is. That's what it really boils down to, right?
I would like to know what end, because it seems like the people who are trying to get that going don't even care about it either. Like they're not doing it. They're just making the rules, but they're not enforcing it.
But that's where the control aspect comes in. If we can control people to do what we want to do, the quality of what we have is grander, right? That idea of the tall tower, people up there, and I'll make it Hunger Games, right? We're going to make people fight for it. And we're going to watch and enjoy it, kind of thing. So, as real as that book has now become, right? I feel like we're living it out a little bit, right?
Yeah.
That there's possibly these elites that are watching all this go down and going, we're going to profit off of this.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think
some
of them,
I don't know yet, right? Because I'm one of those peons down here that have to live it out. I'm not one of the elites.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to be if this podcast can take off. But the reality is that I don't know, right? And so I think the point of, we're not going to be able to dig into it in this episode, but the reality is that we're going to take a look of past things that have happened,
right,
and then kind of correlate those with current things that are going to happen.
Yeah.
Over time, we'll ask people to give us recommendations to talk about conspiracy theories. I'm sure there's going to be some really crazy ones, right? Of course, as the one that thinks that most things are crazy. But the reality is, I think that we're going to have a lot to talk about, and our jobs is also to kind of be pull and go, hey, if we talk about this back in the 70s, this is what happened. Maybe something like that's happening here, because the reality is, you just use the counterintelligence to argue the point on this most current stuff.
Right.
But what would the point of it being now? Back then, it was to deal with communism. What would the point?
Well, no, that was what they said.
Or I guess that was the original intent.
That's what they went after. That's what they put at the top of the page, like underline. Hey, we're going to attack communism, and then they're
And then the targeting.
And then they target all kinds of other groups.
But the theory there could be that they were looking at communism through a very wide set of lenses, and that is that anything that is counter to what we currently do.
But the sum
Martin
up here
Luther
is
King rocked the boat, man.
Sure, but the sum
100%.
up here is they literally created these. I mean, all these events. All these events were to control or incite thoughts into the American people so that they would back their agenda. That is the main piece to every single one of these things we talk about. So where the conspiracy then flies in from is all the stuff that's currently happening. Is it potentially similar? Is it tied? Are we repeating history?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think we have an argument to make there, and we're going to go through it. I think it may be a little far-fetched for me to say, but yes, who's to say all this didn't start at the very beginning of all this because they wanted Biden to be president?
Right. Who knows?
Regardless of what your stance is, regardless of who you voted for.
Right.
There's a lot of conspiracy behind the idea that this could have been the most grand play at getting someone elected.
And then it's my final question to all of us. What is true and what is not? And that is really what we're here for, right? Some conspiracy theories come to light and aren't conspiracy theories at all at the end, right? They uncover truth. However, the caveat is there's a fair amount of fabricated ones, right? And maybe they stinted from some small piece of information, and then it was just like somebody wrote the most deepest fictional book. Mark Twain and one other writer, I want to throw this quote out because it sums up exactly that thought. And he says, truth is stranger than fiction, but it's because fiction is obliged to stick to possibilities. Truth isn't. So you think about that, and it's therefore the craziest far-fetched conspiracy theories, rumors, myths may contain more truth than meets the eye. And that is where we come in. That's where, I look forward to our fans. And in fact, everybody out there that's listening, if you've got a crazy conspiracy theory, mild conspiracy, whatever the case may be, we'll have all of our social media sites set up. You can private message us and just, say, hey, I would like you guys to do some research on this one and see what you guys come up with. And we will happily look into it. But at the end, get ready because we are just starting to scratch the surface of this twisted world. Right, gentlemen?
That's right.
That's it. So, thank you guys all for listening. It's been fun. It's been real. Episode 2 will be right around the corner. And